Good day, folks. This is Judy at Green Pastures Farm. Today I'm covering doing some pasture improvements. Actually doing a little silvopasture work where we're taking out some of the undesirable trees, and we're actually taking out even some walnuts that were too thick. They were all clotted together. The spacing, they're literally 45 feet apart. And so these trees were never going to grow up and make anything. And what we did is we came in here and cut those and let them dry. It takes a little bit of the weight off of them. Then I used the tractor with the grapples. Those hydraulic grapples on that loader are just, well, it's just an amazing tool. We've got some 30 to 40 foot thorn trees cut down on the next piece that I'm going to be working on after I get done with this one. And if you get in the center of the tree and pick them up with that grapple right there, there's no sticking of thorns in your hands or anything. It just grabs the whole tree. You can pick that up and you can put it in a brush pile somewhere. And so what I'm going to do with this pile right here is I'm bringing it down this draw. We've got all this, we cut all this a week ago. And you can see it's all dried up now. I don't know, we probably cut 200 undesirables out here, but we left the walnuts, the oaks, trimmed up some of the trees that had limbs on them that were sticking out, especially on the walnut. Like, this little walnut here. If you take those off, that will be a veneer log in 50, 70 years. So the landowner's grandchildren will have a lot more valuable timber on this farm. This was brush hogged about a week ago, and it was just thick. I mean, you couldn't hardly walk through it. There was lots of thorns and blackberries, and you just name it, it was in here. But I like what I'm seeing. We got, after I brush hogged it, we had 3 days of rain. That certainly helped. But there's just a ton of clover and grasses coming back up through this thatch. So this won't get grazed for about 40 days. So it's going to have plenty of time to recover. But I wanted to get in here now that the ground is solid and get all this stuff stacked. So all these draws, you got to be really careful when you're on that tractor. When you get a load like that, you don't ever lift the grapples. Don't ever get them much more than a foot off the ground. The reason you don't want to get that thing up in the air, and especially on the side of a hill, you've got to keep that thing almost on the ground, because that's a lot of weight out there in front. And when you're going down a hill, on the side of a hill, it can turn your tractor over. So always wear your seatbelt. I do have solid rubber in all the tires, so I don't have to worry about thorn trees. I can run over a thorn or a stub. I'm not going to have a flat tire. Somebody asked, does that act as a ballast, in other words, for weight? Well, it certainly does. Those front tires with that rubber in there, it added like 300 some pounds per tire. On the back tires, it added, gosh, I think it was 800 pounds per tire. So yeah, it's like having wheel weights. But it goes in liquid and it turns solid once it goes in there, and they can melt that rubber when that tire wears out, and they can reuse it and inject it into another tire. So I think that's pretty cool. But this is going to really look different here in another 2 hours. It's about how much time I've got in here actually picking this stuff up and moving it around. But it looks like a park over here. People come out here and they're like, my goodness, Greg, you get to work in this every day? It is a beautiful view. When the leaves are off, you can see even further. It just looks like a panoramic view. It's our version of the Rocky Mountains. We're in central Missouri. We don't have any Rocky Mountains close, but these hills, if you walk up and down them very much, you'll think you're in the mountains. They work get your lungs to working. But man, it's a beautiful day. We've got a northern cool front to push this cool air down to us. We're on about a week of it now. It's August 6th. We should be at mid 90s, And you know what? I'm not complaining. 0% humidity. And it's just gorgeous out here. So it's a great day to be out on the farm working, doing this kind of thing. And I've got 2 more big ridges on the next piece that are just gnarly. And it had a ton of honey locusts on it. We went in there and cut those. And now we're going to bring the grapples in and make some brush piles over there. And most of the brush piles, you know, if the landowners, they don't want to burn them, we'll stack them up and they make habitat for rabbits, birds, mice. Great place for a coyote to go find him a meal on a cold winter morning. And if you burn it, it just goes up in the air. It's carbon gone. So we normally just stack them in piles. But some landowners, you know, they want the place to look, you know, attractive and more park-like. You burn them. That's what you do. But I kind of like leaving the pile stacked myself. It just gives more habitat. And I'm all about habitat, and I don't care what it's for. Whether it's a possum or a coon or a fox, maybe a bobcat. I just like habitat. You know, there's something to be said when you look out across the landscape and there's things for critters to get into to make a home in. And if it's all looks like your front yard, you know, it's just completely smooth and there's no habitat or structure, you're not going to have very many critters living out there. That's just the way it goes. But I'm telling you, the grapples on that tractor, somebody said, why you got a tractor? Well, we do a lot of this. We call Silvopasture clearing. And that one tool will save you. I'll move enough brush today and probably, I'm going to be on that tractor probably 4 or 5 hours. You couldn't do it with 2 men in a month, how much brush I'm going to move. That's how big a tool it is. But you got to be careful. You got to go super slow, put it in low range. Just lock it in 4-wheel drive, because you got to have 4-wheel drive, because when you back up with that big load on there, you can't move it. You got to have 4-wheel drive. It's really slow. Keep the front end loader about 1 foot off the ground max, preferably 6 to 8 inches. And take your time. And if you see brush coming towards you under that grapple, I'll show you what I'm talking about. Right here. If you see limbs coming toward the tractor, in other words, you didn't get them with those hooks or the grapple in front, and there's a limb coming back toward this tractor like that, stop. Just stop, open your grapples, back the tractor up, and come at it again. And make sure you get all the limbs. Because if that limb makes it back into this tractor, next thing you know, you've ripped off that. That's your hydraulics. Or you've got underneath the tractor and ripped off a line or maybe even a fuel line. And I even take duct tape and tape. Of course, you can tell that's been on there a while, but you know what? My hoses are in pristine shape. I got a big, heavy fiberglass bag around those hoses. Then I taped it with mule tape, duct tape, and this turbo tape. And all the brush that I go through, that takes a beating instead of my hoses. Those are the original hoses that have been on there. So, yeah, it's been a good little tractor. We do take good care of it. Try to. And if you take good care of your equipment, it'll be there. Take time to grease. Make sure you grease all these fittings before you ever get started. You see, every one of these fittings, for everything of brush that you're picking up, they're all working. You don't want to start. This one has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's 8 grease certs on each side. And if you don't grease those, you're in trouble. You're going to wear out your front end loader. And the grapple, this is kind of cool. This thing actually has grease certs in the nut on each one of those that pivots. These great big arms that pivot. There's a grease cert on each one of those. Make sure you get those. You know, this is a 75 horse tractor. It's got plenty of power for what I want to do. If you get into stuff much bigger than, you know, 1 foot in diameter, you probably ought to just get a dozer, or, you know, have somebody come in and push the brush. Personally, I like to cut it down so I don't have a big hole in my landscape. if you got a tree that's in the way, like elm trees, you know, elm, there's no really market for the elm on the wood side. Yeah, it makes pretty decent firewood once it's dried out, but you can't split it hardly at all. Some of this is just a menagerie of everything in there, but most of it's got thorns on it. So I'm going to fire this thing up, and I'm going to get a brush pile built down in here. There's going to be one in that draw, and the next draw, and then in the next draw. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to have 4 draws here that's got brush piles in them, which is it's going to be kind of cool because the rabbits will be able to run from one brush pile to the next. So we're going to have some good habitat in here. I'm kind of excited about that. I love rabbits. I like eating rabbits. I like seeing rabbits on the land. And with that, I'm going to sign off. Everyone have a great day, and we'll see you down the road.